I'm back with Susi Oddball, and this is part 5, and we're going to talk about juggling. Over to you, Susi.
Right, this is a little story to begin with on how I met my second husband, but I was at the time still married. But what it was, one day...
With one child?
With one child,
right.
Christopher.
Okay.
One day I looked out of the window one evening and I saw 2 jugglers juggling under the lamplight, and it was the most amazing picture, and I was so inspired. I decided to ask Peter upstairs with my neighbour if he could introduce me to the jugglers, because I wanted to learn to do what they were doing. So he said, well, yeah, that would be fine. You can meet Max. And
who was one of the jugglers downstairs?
Who was one of the jugglers. And there was Bill and Taryn, but Max was staying with Peter, and so was Taryn. Bill was staying somewhere else. So anyway, I went up and knocked on the door, and I said to Peter, I said, because you guys have been making a bit of noise, I'm going to pretend that I was complaining a bit about the noise, and then I'll ask if, you know, what are they doing. So I knocked on the door, and this strange guy with curly hair, quite long curly hair, answered the door, and he had this amazing smile, nice big eyes.
This is Max.
And he had his foot like Jethro Tull. He was standing on one foot, balancing on one foot. So it kind of reminded me of Jethro Tull in a way. And I went, oh, hi, I'm from downstairs, and I'm complaining a bit about the noise because I want to know what you're doing, because I keep on hearing these thumps. And so he explained that they were learning how to ride a unicycle in the spare room. And I said, why is that? And then he explained about the juggling. And I said, juggling, well, you know, and I didn't really know much about it, although I'd seen circus stuff and I'd been to Brighton Mills when I was a child, because that was one of my birthday treats every year. I didn't really take much notice of juggling until I saw this inspiration. So I did say to him, I said, well, actually, I'd love to learn to juggle. And he said, oh, yeah, we'll teach you, but we're going away tomorrow. So I decided that I would learn really quickly before they went away.
What? But he was going away tomorrow.
And I said, can you teach me today? And he said, yeah, sure. So he got 3 balls, and I learned a little bit of the bases. Then they went away.
For how long?
It didn't matter. Anyway, they went away. So I had my cushions on the floor, big floor cushions, and I decided to learn to juggle properly. So I juggled and juggled. And by the time they came back once more to stay at Pete's, and I was ready to do clubs. So they said, oh, well, you have to send off for clubs. So I decided I'd send off for some clubs. And meanwhile, I was juggling with tennis rackets. And I used to hit myself with the face, and I'd go to school because I was a school teacher. And I think that my husband had been beating me up. And I said, yeah, I know that we have arguments, but it's not that bad. But anyway, I did get my clubs eventually from America.
What? But they didn't have clubs in England?
No, they didn't have clubs in England.
Really?
And yeah, they didn't. And they broke in the first week I got them. I was so upset. So I did a kind of repair job on them, and then I tried to get some more clubs. By that time, I was beginning to know that there was a workshop in Covent Garden at Pineapple Studios at the time.
I remember them.
And a guy called Tim Batt, who lives in Brighton.
Oh, I know who you mean. The Birdman.
He was running the workshop at the time.
So he's a juggler?
He's a juggler, yeah.
Got to get him on the show.
And so I kind of got introduced to the world of passing clubs, which is my strength, really. That's what I love doing. I love passing with other people the club.
I know what you're talking about, yes.
So that's how I learnt to juggle through complaining
but hold on, today clubs are made in England now.
Yeah, that's a before I go, I just want to say that my husband left me about my first husband, Eric. He left me for another lady, and juggling really helped me because I had my son, and I became homeless as well, and I lived in Finsbury Park in a bed and breakfast there whilst I was still teaching. In fact, I lived in the same bed and breakfast as some of the children in my class, and they were little ones. They're like 7 and 8 Bangladesh children. They couldn't understand why their teacher was living in a bed and breakfast.
Were you very cut up when he left you?
I was very cut up, yeah, and so was Chris as well. And
Chris is still in touch with him, you said?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I would never turn anyone against. You know, my mum never did it for me. She never turned me against my dad. I'd never do it either.
Right.
Anyway, after 18 months of Eric going,
Yeah.
Max turned up, and he'd been to India, and he'd got wind of where my address was because I'd moved.
Yeah.
And he found it.
Yeah.
And he came and said hello, and he stayed for a couple of days. But he ended up giving us dysentery and getting ill himself. He was pretty ill. So we're all ill in my new flat with dysentery.
Oh, how awful.
So that's how I met Matt, and I was obviously his mother.
Why, was he younger than you?
He's 6 years younger than me.
Really?
Yeah.
Gosh.
So anyway, we got together, and we had children.
You had 3 children.
But the first, when I was having the first child, we were setting up a company by that time.
Yeah, which is Oddballs.
Yeah, which was in about 1984.
Right.
But before 1984, we did have...
Let's see the T-shirt, Susie.
And we did
So
have...
that's a unicycle and...
yeah, and there is,
okay.
there is a back bit to it as well.
2 wheels too many. Wonderful.
So we set up a company in our bedroom, basically.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't the ideal place to set up a shop. And our very
And
first
you were
customers...
juggling around at night, huh?
Our very first customers was 20 Italian clowns. It was crazy.
Well,
time.
actually, you came across my husband, my late ex-husband.
Martin Breese was selling to us.
I know.
That's when we had our shop. This was before we had our shop.
Yes.
So we had all these visitors, and that's when we decided that we needed a shop.
Yeah.
So what we did was, in the end, we were able to borrow some money, and it was a time of the business enterprise scream, I say, but business enterprise, and we borrowed 1,000 and set up our own business. And they matched it with 1,000, so we were able to be in a shop in Islington Park Street eventually with our own juggling, and that's when your husband Martin Breese was selling us magical equipment.
Yeah, because it overlapped. Juggling did overlap into the world of magic and illusion.
We used to sell magic, and we used to sell big illusions as well, like the.
And he overlapped into juggling. I think he even sold juggling books at one stage.
I think he probably worked with Colin Frankham a bit, who is another magician who used to
probably
buy magic, and he was also a juggler. And anyway, so Oddballs was formed, and it was my first husband that thought of the name Oddballs.
It's a great name.
There was my
and
first
it's still
husband.
going as well.
Yeah. And my first husband, my second husband, and me were doing a juggling show together at one point. So I mean, not many people can say that about their 2 husbands. Anyway,
you've juggled husbands.
Not only that, but I've juggled them all over the world.
I'm sure you have.
So our business was quite small at first, and it was a real surprise. And we used to support it with my school teaching wage, and I used to do all the books in my half term.
So his name was Max Stewart Maxwell?
No, his name was Philip, and Maxwell Stewart was his surname.
I see, but he was known professionally as Max.
As Max
see.
Oddball.
I see, Max Oddball.
And I was known as Susi Oddball.
Right. Okay, well, we're going to end there. Thank you, Susie, and we'll move on to part 6. This is 5, isn't it? You're right, so we'll do part 6. Thank you.